Hey, what's going on, everyone? Josh Guerrero here, and welcome to another awesome episode of the All Around Adventure podcast. Whether you're joining me for the first time or if you've been listening to the podcast for a while now, I certainly do want to welcome you here, and I also want to thank you for being here today. I know you're busy. I know you got a lot going on, and there's also so much out there on the internet these days that's trying to get your attention and distract you, but it just means so much to me that you've chosen to download and listen to this podcast. Now, if you are in fact new to this podcast and you're not entirely sure what we're all about here, is the show where you hear amazing tales from afar and get the all-important life lessons that go along with them. And that's done through 3 different shows now that I have on this podcast. I got my regular show, which is an interview show where you hear stories from myself, as well as the amazing guests that I welcome on the podcast. I also have another solo show called The Blog Readings, which is exactly how it sounds. I just read my blog posts, both past and present, for you to have an audio format on the go. And the last solo show that I have is the one that you're listening to right now. And this is your Wisdom Wednesday, where every single Wednesday I just talk for maybe about 5, 6, 7 minutes, somewhere around there, just covering a single topic, either pertaining to self-development or travel. And so that's really what I'm going to be doing today. And today's topic, I want to talk a little bit about fear. Now, this is something that's come up a little bit in a previous podcast that I was a part of. I was recently, I shouldn't say a previous podcast, but another podcast rather that I was a part of called Man of Mastery, where I got to talk with host Michael Bullock. And during our conversation, the topic of fear came up a little bit. And I was talking about how fear is one of the reasons that keeps people from wanting to go out and traveling the world, because one of the most basic fears that we have is fear of the unknown. You know, it's just kind of innate fear that just humans have had for a long time. It's one of our most basic fears that we experience. And there's also just fear of just, safety reasons. We hear a lot about issues that are going on like out there in the world, and, just this is kind of perpetuated through things like social media and, mainstream media and things like that. And I also had a conversation with Patrick Sweeney on the podcast. This is about 3 months ago or something like that. And something about that conversation really struck a chord with me. And that's what I want to share with you all today in this topic of fear, is that yes, there's a lot of these fears, and fears are valid. I mean, it's one of the most powerful forces that we can experience as humans. But there's another fear that I have that is stronger than those other fears, and that's what leads me to conquer these other fears. And that is the fear of regret. It's the fear of regret that maybe, years and years and years down the road, when I'm laying on my deathbed and I have to look back on my life and I have to ask myself the question, what if? And that could just be on grand scales. Maybe let's say pertaining to travel. If I have to ask myself, what if I traveled to this destination? Or what if I had traveled to here or to there or something along those lines? Or even go on the small scale items too. Like, what if I had asked my boss for a promotion? What if I had asked for that raise that I felt that I deserved? What if I went to go ask that girl out at the coffee shop that I thought was beautiful and I wanted to meet her? And also, I had a lot of fear with just announcing the expedition that I want to do later this year, Operation Dual Trek. Because part of Operation Dual Trek, when I'm going down to South America to walk in Paraguay and Uruguay, I'm going to be asking donations for a nonprofit that I support called American Veterans Archaeological Recovery. And I'm kind of afraid to ask for donations because, I don't want to seem like I'm bothersome or that I'm being burdensome or anything along those lines too, or that I would potentially be an inconvenience. And so I was kind of afraid to do that. And it kind of took a lot to actually bring myself to put it out there that I was doing this and to start asking people for donations. But again, I know I'd have regret later on in my life if I looked back and thought to myself, you know what, Josh? You could have made a difference in the lives of many veterans if you had only actually went out and did that thing that you contemplated doing, but you didn't do it because you were afraid. And I think just having that fear, if I have to reflect on that later on in my life, I mean, that scares the shit out of me, quite frankly. And that's ultimately what brought me to actually go and put myself out there and to announce what it is that I'm doing for Dual Trek and to start asking people for donations. And if you think about it, really, it's not like I'm asking anyone to do anything immoral. It's not wrong to, ask people to contribute to a worthy cause. or anything like that. But, there's definitely some fear there. So think about this as you go on the rest of your week. What are some fears that you have? And are any of these fears tied to the things that you want to achieve in your life? And of course, we brought up the example of travel. Is there places that you want to go, but maybe you're afraid to go there for, X, Y, and Z reasons? And then think about, what steps you can take to overcome those fears. And, and I guess I'm talking about fear right now, but I certainly will admit I'm not the foremost expert in this. I say if you really want to get deep into the topic of fear and also even going down pretty deep to even a psychological level, how this, affects, your brain and everything like that, I definitely recommend go to connect with Patrick Sweeney. They call him the Fear Guru. I had a fantastic conversation with him on the podcast, and I'll link that in the description below. If you're watching this on YouTube, or I'll put it in the show notes if you're listening on the podcast. He also just released a book that I'm excited to start here pretty soon called Fear is Fuel. That just came out last week. And so I'll also leave a link to that in the description and the show notes for you to go check that out as well. So that's really all I have to say on today's topic, fear. I hope you certainly found this insightful, and let me know, what do you want to hear in future episodes of Wisdom Wednesday? Again, these episodes are for you all, and however best I could tailor these episodes to serve you, I certainly want to know what it is that you want to hear. So feel free to connect with me on social media. I'm on Facebook and Instagram at All Around Adventure, and I'm on Twitter at All Around Advent. You can also shoot me an email at josh@allaroundadventure.com. Besides that, I want to thank you very much for tuning in today. Again, it just really means so much to me to have your support, and be on the lookout for a brand new episode this Saturday. I am welcoming my friend Camelia Britton, aka the Hackerette, back on the podcast for round 2, and she joined me for an incredible conversation that I think you all are really going to enjoy. So be sure to check back in on this Saturday to tune into that episode as well. But until then, I'm Josh Guerrero saying be safe, happy travels, and always move forward.